can begin our business as a joint committee. So looks like we're live, is that correct? Okay, very good. So Jerome Porter, welcome to the, well, still the Senate Transportation Committee, soon to be Joint Transportation Committee. Look forward to hearing about the Youth Challenge program and all the things that have that you've done in the past couple of months to get ready for this interim. Not to prejudge the process here, but I'm pretty sure this is going to be at the top of the list here for interim topics. So the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Senate Transportation Committee. For the record, my name is Major General Greg Porter, and I serve as the Adjutant General for the state of Wyoming. With me today is Chris Smith, plus we have quite a few other folks if we want to get in detail. I think just by way of background, if I can bring your attention to slide 9 of the packet in front of you, that'll really start this portion of the brief. And that'll be the Wyoming Cowboy Challenge closer review slide at the top. So to provide just a little background for those that may not be familiar with the issue, Wyoming Cowboy Challenge is a Department of Defense program administered through the National Guard Bureau to really target at-risk youth across the nation. There are currently about 38 programs across about 32 different states. That number's in flux a little bit because there have been a couple of closures recently, but that is the case. It's paid 75% federally and 25% with a state match. Usually 2 classes happen a year, 22 weeks of resident phase at Camp Guernsey, and then a year mentoring phase following that. Wyoming has been in the Youth Challenge business since about 2004. We're approaching our 20th anniversary on it. But in September of this year, I made the decision and recommendation to Governor Gordon to close down the academy because I felt that we could not keep the cadets safe. And this was really the result of a decline in staff, of being able to train and acquire staff to come to work at the academy. It was not a particularly easy decision to make. There was obviously some very dedicated folks that work for the Wyoming Cowboy Challenge and has done so for a long time. Not to mention the cadets that were currently there, Class 46, but. That recommendation was, and we closed the academy at Camp Guernsey at that time. Any other questions on background before I kind of give you a status of where we're going? All right, if we could turn the page to slide 10, I just want to give you the current status of WCCA. We currently have 21 Wyoming cadets that were scheduled to go to our academy, Class 47, that we've partnered with the state of Nevada. And they are attending Cowboy Challenge class down there. So there's 21 currently there. We have 2 full-time staff remaining through June of 2024 to finalize the shutdown at Camp Guernsey and also be able to do our mentoring program that we're obligated to do with them. We have 5 state active duty military personnel on through the 31st of March, and that's really to help with the close down of the physical facilities at Camp Guernsey and turning over the Youth Challenge equipment and resources to other programs should they desire it. If I go to the next slide on 11, this is the current status of the 46 cadets that were or 62 cadets that were in Class 46. 29 cadets we moved from Wyoming to another program, either in Montana, Idaho, or California, so they could finish the program, and that was their decision to do that. 4 of them went ahead and attended the challenge program that's part of the 21 currently. 1 went to Florida, 11 work full or part-time, 14 work on HiSET or GED. HiSET is the other name for a high school diploma. To get that done. 1 went to Army basic training, 17 are in high school or trade school, 4 completed their HiSET, 3 remain at risk, and then 12 we've had no contact with since we've dismissed the cadets. There's a couple of overlaps on the asterisks there because some cadets fall in a couple of different categories. Any questions on?
Any questions so far?
Where we are?
Go ahead.
All right. So what Chairman Boner asked us to really do is take a look at studying the interim topic of where do we relocate? How do we get after this problem of at-risk youth in Wyoming? So Mr. Smith's going to walk through where we are to date and really make a recommendation to you of what we're going to brief you in May as our way forward. Mr. Smith?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Chris Smith with the Military Department. So down on slide 12, we have to reapply to open a challenge academy with NGB. They wouldn't let us hold the program in abeyance for a long period of time. Now, since about 2010, NGB has specific criteria that a program must meet, or an application for a program must meet, that wasn't in effect when we stood up the program back in 04 to 06. Two of the criteria I'm going to talk about on the next few slides because they're very critical to our ability to stand up a program here in Wyoming. So flipping over to slide 13, the criteria the NGB uses is called the Challenge Site Suitability and Readiness Assessment. We have to grade each of these. We will grade each of these with the various courses of action when we talk to you in May in detail about any locations. One of the problems is National Guard Bureau has a scorecard, and I'll talk about the specific criteria at the very end. We'll really go into it in depth in May when we brief the committee. But you're required to score points in all 15 categories, and there's some minimum numbers that cause us problems. If you flip over to the next page on slide 14, two of them in particular. First one is the scorecard now requires a minimum number of high school dropouts annually in the state. The minimum number that you can get points under this criteria is 4,000 dropouts. The maximum points require you to have over 28,000 dropouts. According to the Department of Education, using 2022 data, we had 1,235 dropouts. So we're a third or more less than, we only have a third or so of the minimum number that NGB requires. So at this point, we can't meet the minimum requirement of the program. The second criteria, even if we could get that waived, and we are unaware of any methodology to seek a waiver on slide 15, the second criteria says that the location has to have a minimum population of 50,000 people within a 1-hour drive. That's to get 1 out of the possible 20 points. You have to have 250,000 people to get the maximum number of points of 20. So given that criteria, only Cheyenne and Casper by themselves meet that. You can add in Douglas and Laramie because they're within a 1-hour drive. So you basically have those couples. You have Casper, Douglas, or Cheyenne, Laramie. So on the next slide, on slide 16, so essentially it looks like going in, we have 3 potential courses of action. Number one is do what we're doing right now, which is some form of partnership with another challenge program to send Wyoming kids to. The second is to open in Cheyenne and or Laramie. Or then the third is Casper or Douglas. And those last two, the problem is only works if NGB agrees to waive the minimum dropout rate for the state. So with that, any questions from the committee? I have a couple more slides that what we propose.
Well, that's important piece of information. Any questions right now? Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this is interesting, these numbers, because, of course, I know our school district, for example, is very focused on limiting the number of dropouts, and they've had a lot of success doing that. But it seems to me a lot of the students who graduate from high school still don't know that they don't really have an interest going on to college. And so they're kind of struggling for a career. It seems like if they could go through this kind of training, might help them decide to do a military career. I just interested in your comments on that.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Smith, yeah.
Senator Furphy. The program as established by the US Congress and funded to NGB for the states is specific to the 16 to 18-year-old at-risk high school dropout. Once they graduate from school or over 18 years of age, they can't come into the program. So totally understand what you're saying. Certainly a program like this for the 18-year-olds and older might be of great value, but that's not this program by the federal program standards.
Okay, Senator Pappas? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, great. And so, I mean, I guess my question is, it's this requirement that, dropouts in the state, but clearly the program serves more than just Wyoming students. We heard about that constantly. So it seems like the bureaucratic requirement that is imposed some point, not presumably not by an act of Congress. I'm assuming somebody back in the National Guard Bureau made up that requirement at some point. So why is that incongruent when the fact is we have a larger group of students outside the state that we draw from?
Mr. Chairman, this is the site selection criteria. So that's what they use when they're determining a site. So obviously, since we'd already have the site picked, we were able to attract students from other states in order to reach our enrollment numbers. I think it's a little bit apples and oranges. What we talk about here is simply their new criteria in selecting a new site for it. Could we use that argument when we go and say, hey, listen, would you consider this as part of the waiver? Absolutely, we could, sir.
Okay, yeah, I think everybody who's worn a uniform for more than a year or two knows that where there's a will, there's a waiver, right? Mm-hmm. So now we can certainly involve our congressional delegation if we have to.
And Mr. Chairman, just to add, as you well know, we had a number of cadets from Colorado and Nebraska because they do not have a program. We also pulled a few from South Dakota just for convenience of timing. So we definitely have a history and some data that we can present to NGB about a more regional approach. We just don't know. This is their new criteria. And just to reemphasize, this criteria is new. It did not exist in the past.
Yeah, and I'm actually looking right now at that Word document that has the criteria, and I'm looking at, demand equals a sufficient number of high school dropouts exist within the state and catchment area. The catchment area is defined as a 300-mile radius, so that would probably include the Front Range in just about any circumstance of those two options. So I'd like to think that we might be good to go there if we can include Fort Collins, and I think even if it's in Casper, that 300-mile radius would include Fort Collins. Maybe even the Denver metro area. So so I appreciate that. Any further questions? Okay, so I think at least what I'm thinking, I'd like to hear your response, gentlemen, is when we hit the ground running in May. This is the first part of it, and we kind of understand a little bit of the process, a little bit of the criteria, how this actually works. But I'm hoping that we can hopefully have these numbers crunched on a couple of locations. It's all fine and well to talk about general areas, but the fact is, the other big part of this is that we need a building, we need facilities, we need to find an actual place to make sure that we can administer this program. That's going to be the other significant part of the equation, in addition to all the criteria that we have here. So. Is there any way you could discuss some of the potential locations that you've been looking at?
Yes, sir. Chris, why don't you continue on with the slide deck, and then we'll if that doesn't answer where the chairman's going, we'll address that.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chairman, so on slide 17, our proposed plan is to evaluate these courses of action, including some rough cost estimates. We've been in contact with the Department of Family Services looking at their experience with the boys and girls schools, as well as Cathedral Home over in Laramie, really trying to get an idea of workforce and what are they doing to attract folks working, since that was a major issue for us at Guernsey. We've also received workforce data from the Department of Workforce Services, and we are looking with the Department of Education, and actually I think it's the State Construction Department, has a list of existing facilities that are available for use by the state. Because one of the problems, if you go over to the next slide that the chairman was referencing on slide 18, this is just a list. 1 through 15 are those 15 NGB criteria. If you look at 10, 11, and 12, you'll see they look at the specific proposed facility. And so we'll have to try to identify possible places in order to score any of these cities. None of the facilities that we're aware of, whether it's a mothballed elementary school or junior high, or the state fairgrounds, as the chairman and I discussed at one point, none of them are going to meet all the requirements because you have to have a barracks or a place for people to stay for 22 weeks. You have to have a full-time kitchen to serve 3 meals a day. You have to have a workout area. There's a lot of requirements that the average school won't have. So we'll try to assess all those. If we can't locate a specific facility, we'll try to look at typical facilities in the area. But we're hoping we'll get a list of available state facilities for each of those 4 cities to analyze for May.
Any questions about that committee? Senator Cole.
Thank you, Chairman Bonner. So I'm trying to understand this thing. So we don't currently have the program anymore. And it seems, frankly, what I'm hearing is unfeasible to have a program like this in the state of Wyoming because of all the challenges we're facing. So I guess I look forward to finding out how this is actually going to work, because it doesn't, I mean, there's a lot of parts and pieces to this. And looking at the criteria, I don't understand, I can't see it yet. I look forward to more information. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, Senator Cole, yeah, we'll provide you with, the scorecard is very detailed and it has specific categories, like I mentioned about the dropout numbers. So we'll certainly provide all that to you before May for like a read ahead, so we'll let you know where we are. But clearly, it's an uphill fight.
And I just point out that, maybe the facility doesn't exist right now, but that's why we need to incorporate, say in Laramie, maybe UW. I know there's certainly, we love building buildings on that campus. And there might be one that it could become available in the near future, especially with that dorm project that's going on. And so we need to, loop in the, University of Wyoming, Natrona County School District number 1, whoever, State Fair, whoever it is that we're, looking to potentially use their property for this program. I think that's, we need to be looking towards the future and what it would take to, get the facilities ready if that's what becomes necessary. I think it will at some point. We'll have to do some work no matter what facilities we have or whatever location is.
And I was going to mention, Mr. Chairman, we listed 3 additional criteria in bold down on the end of slide 18. And those are criteria we want to look at, which, because of our problems we had at Camp Guernsey, labor force, future job growth, and then of course the estimated state cost wherever we locate it, what's going to have to be built, kind of thing. So we'll try to provide at least an estimate of that in May. So hopefully your meeting will be in late May, sir.
Forgot when it was exactly. I'm sure it'll be ready regardless. So, any further questions, committee? Okay, we will see where the house is, maybe. Is anybody tracking them? Yeah, we'll just go ahead and stand at ease for now. And we'll come back into session as soon as the house gets it down here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get started again.
Three-quarters of the discussion. No, not really.
Okay, so we are joined by our House colleagues. Welcome. I appreciate your diligence in doing the people's work, even working through lunch. So just a little bit of update where we've been. We just heard an update on the Cowboy Challenge Academy from the military department. I'd encourage you to go back and look at the video of that. And if you have any questions, certainly feel free to reach out to me or Chairman Brown. I think we got some pretty good information as to what's required, what it's going to take to get this program going again. So we're not going to continue with that discussion, but we are going to look at the rest of the submitted topics. And so what I'm thinking here, Chairman and committee, is that we're going to hear from the public. We're going to try and focus again on public input as much as possible this meeting. We're going to ask for you to provide your input. And maybe Kim would be able to go over that at the end of the meeting as to how that would specifically work. I ask that we get that done within 2 days after this meeting. That way, Chairman Brown and I can begin to work on our submittal to Management Council, who ultimately approves all of our interim topics. So that's the way the process works briefly, especially for some of you newer folks. And so I just ask that everybody be short and to the point. We have 15 pages worth of topic proposals. Once again, the point of this meeting is to get public input. So we'll go ahead and get started with the military department. Welcome again, gentlemen. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Brown, members of the House Transportation Committee. Welcome. I thought it might be just a quick introduction in terms of the intent and the process going through the interim, just to make sure that we're tracking. Normally, what has been done and could be done is in the May meeting, we will really come back and give you a recommendation on these topics of should it be legislation, should it be, is there another fix for it? You can obviously agree or disagree or give more guidance to us, but it's really a very in-depth look of the study of the problem. Then the second meeting, normally we would bring legislation to those things that you wanted us to do. And then the final meeting is sort of the cleanup, anything we have to do to get ready, and any other legislation that if that's not how you want to do it, perfectly fine. I just wanted to make sure that we're tracking. And I think Director Reiner is somewhat of the same mind, but I'll let him speak to that when he has the opportunity. But does that make sense? Does that sound like it was okay? Already. Then let me turn it over to Mr. Smith and we'll go through it. I think we could go to slide 3. Slide 1 was the Cowboy Challenge Academy way ahead. We discussed that. We're in slide 3 of the packet before you, and I'll turn it over to Chris.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, so we have 5 proposed interim topics. Number 1 was the Cowboy Challenge. We're going forward with that. Number 2 is increasing Wyoming National Guard strength by encouraging military ready, and it really has to do with the ASVAB score. That's the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. We'd like to look to see if anything the state can do to encourage people, high school students, to take the test and also do better at it. So that's really that interim topic. And these are in our order of priority for the committee. Number 3 on slide 4 is how to fund any professional malpractice liability claims and any future Guernsey fire costs. As this committee, both sides are well aware, we passed a bill expanding the malpractice liability to our professionals this session. One of the concerns that's been raised is how would we pay for any type of claims like that? I will tell you, in my 20 plus years in the Guard, we've never had one of those claims, but that's the question. The second is, as you know, periodically, unfortunately, we have fires at Camp Guernsey. Sometimes they go off post. There are costs associated with that. And so we had a working group come together and say, should we create a fire fund to pay for some of those costs to our surrounding responding neighbors? The counties all pay into a fund, a revolving fund or an enterprise fund. They don't want us to participate in that because it's not set up that way. So the idea is we would put these two together. Could be a separate fund, could be one of the existing enterprise revolving funds. That's what we'll study and get back to you on. The next slide on page 5, and I'll stand for any committee questions, trying to go through them fairly quickly. So on page 5, number 4 of ours is veteran service representatives at Wyoming colleges and university. Really, this is just to look at, are we doing enough for our veterans and really servicemen in our schools of higher education? The schools already do a lot of things, just want to look at to see what else we could do, and we'll report back to this committee in May with an idea of what each of the schools is doing. The fifth and final one is a little strange, but it's really, is there legislation required for the state to accept jurisdiction over civilian offenders from the federal government? So at F.E. Warren this is an F.E. Warren Air Force Base problem, and it's really a DOD. The DOD initiative has been to divest itself of handling civilian criminal offenders from traffic tickets on up off of F.E. Warren, because they want DOD to be in the war fight and not dealing with those kind of issues. In many states, they've been able to give jurisdiction to the local district attorney. We talked about this a couple of years ago, and there were some concerns about workload. It remains a DOD priority to do this, especially in the juvenile arena, because the federal court system does not have a juvenile process. They have no way to deal with juvenile offenders. The problem for Wyoming is in our state statute, there is an existing statute where the state gave to the federal government exclusive jurisdiction at F.E. Warren. Frankly, because the federal government back in the 1800s forgot to reserve it when they created the state. That's how old that is. So the question mark that we need to pursue is, do we need legislation to overcome that statutory provision, or can the governor just accept jurisdiction? I think it's going to require an attorney general opinion, and we'll work that issue in the interim. Those are our 5 interim topics, and I'll stand for the committee's questions.
Any questions from the military department? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Okay, Director Reiner, you have anything briefly?
Good afternoon, the Joint Committee. Luke Reiner, for the record, Luke Reiner, Director WIDOT. Well, we have 2 proposed topics. I did notice that there's a lot of other people interested in what we might be doing. So the first one would be on page 8 of the packet that was put out, and really has to do with the fact that during the year, things always come up with an agency this size. And so it's a catch-all interim topic that says, hey, we need to study statutes as they come up. And so that's the first one. And then the second one on page 13 would almost fit into the category of the first one on page 8, but I will tell you that we would like to pop open the fuel tax administration statute. So that's not fuel tax rates. That is how we actually go about collecting the statutes. And that came about is we've received some feedback this last year that we could do some things differently. Specifically, the one that came up was once a report is received from somebody who has to submit tax, they have 10 days to act on it. And it's just a quick turnaround. I say, you know what? We don't mind if it's a 30-day, but it's 10 days in statute and we enforce statute. So it's those type of issues there. So just go through and see if there's something we want to update there. But Mr. Chairman, I'll tell you, we took care of a lot of stuff this year. Thank you. And so I know there'll be other topics that will come up dealing with transportation, but if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Committee, just as a heads up as well, both the directors, the TAG and myself, and then as well as with the other chairman, last year, as you remember, we had 22 bills come out of this committee. And that was an exceptional amount of work that was done by our previous standing committee, interim committee. But we've been in discussions with both the directors at this point that we don't want to be bringing 22 bills. So appreciate the diligence, both parties here bringing us limited scope of what you guys are looking to do, and make sure that if we do have anything outside of these, that they're narrowly focused, and as we have been instructed as chairman, that we bring high quality information out of this, and they're high caliber bills that need to be brought forward. So as we look at the statute updates, I think that's one of those that we look at a very broad bill that is one bill and not 13 bills that need 13 different areas of statute cleaned up. But I appreciate the due diligence of both the directors coming forward and making sure that this was as tight as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, if I could just maybe take, this may be the last time to address this group. If I could just thank you all really for your professionalism this session in taking that amount of bills, because we did have a lot of bills, and they have, for the most part, made it through this body. And it's not without the hard work of all of you here. And certainly thank you for the support of the men and women of YDOT for that, because it makes a huge difference. So appreciate it.
Okay, any questions for YDOT committee? Okay, oh, go ahead, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Co-Chairman Boner. Director Reiner, exactly on this proposed interim topic of the review and possibly revised fuel tax administration statutes, what are you trying, I mean, changing percentages, just what is the goal here? Thank you, Mr.
Go
Chairman.
ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, really, what brought it to the forefront was a complaint from a constituent that they have to act too fast. And that once that there's a 10-day limit in there, and if they get it on Friday, then Saturday and Sunday count. And so the request was, hey, could you expand the number of days? And so it says, yeah, we can look at it. So that's what's behind it. There may be other items in there. It has been popped open for a while. Certainly I have no interest in dealing with the amount of tax, but it's in the process of collecting that tax, which takes 12 or 13 of us in the department.
Any further questions, committee? Okay, I'll just make more of a statement. I think we're also, it's not in your packet, but I've been hearing a lot of feedback and interest in just general procedures that you have, anything from your governance structure with, you have to tell me how many different boards you have within the department to just, what are the procedures for change orders, what's your decision-making look like, how you prioritize projects, things of that nature. I think we're going to take a broad look or overview even of those types of things, and it could be a very broad topic. So just a heads up for the committee and the public, that's probably something that I know my leadership is interested in on our side. I think it'd be beneficial for me, at least to learn at a deeper level how the department works. So you've been warned, Director. That's
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll take that for probably an education session. I would assume early in the process, so that if there's potential legislation that comes out of it, then that we have a couple more meetings to address it.
absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, last chance for why not, folks. Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, so can we get a show of hands? How many people are interested in testifying here today? Nobody's here to testify. We're just gonna. Okay, so yeah, no, really, raise your hands if you're gonna testify. We need, okay, 1, 2, that's it? Anybody online? How many people we have online? Nobody. Okay, cool. All right, so at this point, we're just gonna throw it open to the public. Committee members, you have your list here. Like I said, the idea is that you have a time to process what you hear today, and you submit what you're most interested in to our current committee secretary here during the session, and we can now help the chairman and I make some decisions. So public comment, come on down if you got it. Welcome, Representative. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ken Chestick, House of Representatives, District 13. I will be brief. I know you have a lot of time crunches here. I just wanted to testify very briefly on the item on, I think it's page 2 of your handout, the allowable train lengths topic. It was proposed this session as it went to the Corporations Committee where it failed, and I understand why, because it's a very complex topic, but it's a very important one dealing with allowable train lengths. I'm not going to read the material. I think it's self-explanatory. I just want to add a little bit of color to it. We recently saw the train derailment in East Palestine, which caused a major fire and a lot of environmental hazards that are still being cleaned up. It has been determined that the train was over length. It was a long train that caused that derailment. There's no, apparently it was a wheel bearing that overheated. Whether or not the length of the train was related to that overheating of that wheel bearing remains to be determined. It's still under investigation. But that's an example of the kinds of things that these long trains can do. When they derail, they create all kinds of problems. So I just wanted to point out that a legislative committee in Arizona, after the East Palestine derailment, has approved a bill just like the one I've proposed on allowable train lengths, trying to limit the trains down to 8,500 feet. So it's a topic it's timely, it's nationwide, and it's a very complex issue, and there's many possible ways of solving it, and we need discussion. The bill that I proposed needed more discussion. I have no doubt at all that the bill could be improved through an interim topic. So I do think we have a lot of trains that go through Wyoming. They do haul hazardous materials. And I think it's very important for public safety and also for efficiency of shipping and getting our coal and trona shipped. So I would encourage you to consider that very seriously as an interim topic.
Okay, any questions for the representative? Sarah Kolb.
Hey, Co-Chairman Boner. Representative, what was the exact process of this bill? I mean, the votes as it went through the process, exactly how did it, I know it died in committee, but could you elaborate on that? Thank you.
It was brought to me by the railroad employees who are, they're willing to work, but they're concerned about their safety. You know, when you have a 3-mile long train and something goes wrong, they've got to figure out what went wrong, and they're causing all kinds of problems. So it was brought to me by the employees, but they have legitimate safety concerns, and I do believe that they need to, the safety issues that are inherent in these long trains need to be addressed, and that's
Just a second, I think that he's wanting to know what committee did it die in and what was the vote.
It went to the Corporations Committee, and I think it was a 6 noes and 1 aye, because the committee was not fully. There were a few people absent and excused, so I don't know the exact vote, but there was only 1 yay vote.
Okay, thank you. Any follow-up, Senator? Okay, Representative Wiley. Or O'Hearn, okay. got it.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. What is the current length of the trains being run in Wyoming presently? And you mentioned the workers that have said that they're way too long. I was wondering how long they are now presently. Thanks.
They vary, every train varies in length, but some of them go as much as almost 3 miles, a 3-mile long train, and the standard train is more like 1.5 miles or less than 1.5 miles. But some trains get as long as 3 miles. 2 3-mile trains are, I think the average for Union Pacific is about 9,800 feet, which is well over the 8,500 standard length train. The average for Union Pacific is 9,800. So most of their trains are over the standard length.
One follow-up, thank you. Have we stopped any emergency service vehicles from going past crosswalks and railroad yards so far? Has that been a concern yet?
I'm certain that it has been a concern because especially right here in Cheyenne, there's a intersection of Southwest Drive and Lincoln Way that is routinely blocked for 10, 15, 20 minutes, an hour at a time because of trains that are stopped. They're too long. They're stopped downtown to recrew, and the long trains block the intersections for a long period of time, many times a day. And it stands to reason that emergency vehicles can't get through that intersection, and that happens all over the state. Statistics on it, you can't really get statistics on it, but it stands to reason when those intersections are blocked for long periods of time, whether it happens or not, it is hazard for the emergency vehicles.
Okay, any further questions? Go ahead, Representative. Yeah.
Representative Chestek. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when you brought this to committee and corporations, didn't you say something about a federal study that was going on?
There is a federal study that is who knows how long it's going to take. There are no federal regulations on length of train. So it's an area that is wide open for legislative fix. There is a study underway, and who knows how long the federal study is going to take and how long, what Congress will do with it, we don't know. But if we can do something in the interim, or maybe for a long term, depending on what happens in Congress, I think it's important to do that.
Anybody else? Okay, so did you submit this proposal to corporations as well? No. Why not? It is assigned to corporations.
I'm not sure why it was assigned to corporations for sure, but this I think is the appropriate committee to hear the bill. It's more natural for this committee.
Okay. Any further questions? Thank you, Representative. Appreciate it. Okay. Our other customer here, Shay, come on down.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Dave Pickard. I represent the Alliance of Automotive Innovators. I think I have that correct. But essentially, they changed their name 2 years ago. What it is, it's the Alliance for the Auto Manufacturers. And I see two topics on your proposed list. I know you haven't discussed them yet today, but what I would share with you on page 6, Representative Brown's topic regarding basically EV taxes and the administration of such. And then on page 10 on Representative Ahern's AV. So we're talking EV and AVs. And what I would share with the committee is we've been through these discussions several times over the last several years. It typically starts with my friends that are sitting behind me with the department, bringing suggestions and all. What I'd recommend the committee do in this interim is have a discussion with the auto manufacturers. We build the EVs, we build the AVs. We're on the cutting edge of all of that. I think it'd be very helpful to the committee to spend at least an hour having a presentation by the companies or by the association. It'll give you a better understanding of what the future of EVs and AVs are in the state of Wyoming, what it means technology-wise. We do know that there's a lot of issues that we need to solve. We had the AV bill for 2 sessions, and ultimately it came down to a couple issues within that bill that, pardon the pun from the previous discussion, but derailed it. I think we can get there on AV very much. So, and the same with EV. I just think the committee needs to have a full understanding from the manufacturer's side where it's going and what the environment and the market looks like out there. So that's, and I'm not discouraging you or encouraging you. Just wanted to offer that as an opportunity for education in front of the committee, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions?
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Okay, any public comment? Want to double check, nobody online still? Okay. All right, public comment is closed. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the committee, I guess I should just say gentlemen, or lady and gentlemen, there you go. And sorry. And committee members, any discussion on these proposed topics? We have, I don't know, about 15, 20 minutes, I'd say here. Anything that you are particularly passionate about, now is your chance to influence the other members of the committee as we prioritize what we think is going to be the best use of the committee's time. So, over here. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm thumbing through here and I turn to page 11 and I see one that really piques my interest from Representative Smith. Have you had an opportunity to discuss that with this committee?
You want to say something? Go ahead.
This proposed topic was brought to us by a person in the state that sent out a mass email, and so I just said, sure, let the people's voice be heard. So.
Okay, so this is, go ahead, Representative.
Thank you. I just find that very interesting. Having lived in this state all of my life, as well as my brother, who's just a few years younger. This was a discussion that came up just a little while ago. And his issue was he's a pharmacist. And so deliveries were not coming. And they were short of things. People were having to delay procedures. We understand there's a lot involved with that. And the challenges of this year in particular are pretty rough. But I believe I spoke with a representative from YDOT, and it's something that is particularly of interest to me.
Okay, any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm thinking for the director, I'm not sure that this will be probably legislatively fixed, but I do think probably some information on some historical backgrounds, closure, stuff like that will probably be helpful for the committee to understand what's been going on. I know you guys have also worked very diligently over the past 6-7 years to institute the rolling closures to try to prohibit the stacking up of vehicles everywhere. So maybe just a little bit more information for the committee. As you also see, there's a lot of new faces to the committee from even last year. So I think more than anything, I think that's what we'll need.
All right, and being one of those new faces, I think that'd be helpful for me to understand how what process you go through to come up with different types of closures. For example, for light, high-profile vehicles, seems like sometimes we partially close a road to certain types of traffic, and that would be helpful for me to understand how you go about doing that, whether we need a law where that's happens through rulemaking. And once again, I think tying into the topic I originally discussed, what's the process and who makes that decision? Who just makes the decision to close the road, and is that the director's decision? Is that vary by region, and how does that work?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. So I think that would be a worthwhile discussion. Certainly, our focus in this space is to support the economy of the state and to keep those roads open as much as they can be. And lots of men and women out there working really hard to make that happen. And so happy to discuss it, happy to talk about the programs that are out there that actually are growing in success. You talked about the Wyoming Travel Authorization Program. Today, well over 16,000 people, signed up for it. But just the other day, sitting, in this building, helped 2 people say, yeah, check this out. Here's how you can go when the roads are, are partially closed per se. So certainly, I know it's a topic that interests everybody, and we'll be happy to discuss it.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator
just
Price?
comment on that. Typically, I think a lot of it is probably going to hinge on how we're going to pay for our roads, highways, and bridges in the future. And as you know, well, I don't know, maybe many of you don't know, but certainly the committee last interim has looked at the bleak finances coming forward. I believe we're going to be underwater $120 million a year just in horizontal construction. And so a lot of that, keeping roads and highways open for travel has financial consequences. And so this committee is going to have to look at ways of finding alternate sources to fund YDOT. Not only roads and highways. I mean, we've placed a lot of burdens on YDOT as well. We've got aeronautics, we've got WildLink, we've got all sorts of things that we've required them to do. But they all come at a cost. And so I think that as we travel down the road and want to see things happen, we have to understand that the biggest issue is how are we going to fund our roads going into the future? Certainly we've looked at road usage charge in the past. We've looked at tolling I-80. I see it's back on the list. We tried increasing the gas tax a few years ago, and that failed. And we all know that the gas tax is unsustainable going forward. So I think there's some hard decisions that we're going to have to make in the legislature when it comes to roads and highways. I think it all starts with us. So just want to keep that in the back of our noodle. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So following up on that as a framework, and maybe you want to sit there for 1 second. Following, trying to set a framework for that discussion. WYDOT is a component unit of the state of Wyoming, which means that it has its own accounting environment, produces its own audited financial statement. So the statewide financial statement for last June was just published and posted this last week. Your financial statement for June 30, I believe, is your year end. My question is, when do you anticipate the publication of your financial statement for the year ended, I believe, September 30, 2022?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Overmiller, so our year end is 30 September. We do have special provisions to not be on the state's year end based on all of the federal money we use and sort of the requirements to sort of, it's been easier in the past to match up on the federal side. The audit is actually nearing completion and would expect it to be released here in the next couple months.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I would like to include that maybe in your overall, you were talking about the overall picture of WYDOT. I think their financial statement is a critical piece of that for us to look at and have the department bring their financial people in to describe what's on that.
Very good.
With a particular focus on the income and expense statement of that financial.
Very good. I think that's always very helpful to understand the workings of an agency. Just look at their budget, look at their numbers. I think that's always pretty darn helpful. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Boner.
Go ahead, Representative Arnold.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 4, I'm very excited about the passenger rail. Don't want to get anybody off track. Is that a WYDOT function? I remember with my dad, us kids had run to the observation car every time the conductor or the guy would come by and say, we're going to come to a tunnel. So I'm really interested if we could get passenger rail back in Wyoming. Is that a WYDOT thing or not? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Ahern, I will tell you that typically we say rail is not a WYDOT issue. Now, I will tell you that there are different factions working on light rail here in the state, specifically the Cheyenne Chamber of Commerce. We go to those meetings and we support those meetings because in terms of being a conduit from a governmental entity of some sort within the state to the federal government is typically us. And so while we have zero oversight responsibility of rail, we certainly are a conduit with the Federal Rail Association. The one thing we do with rail in the state is we pay attention to about 300 and some odd at-grade railroad crossings. So, but certainly it has come up and it is transportation. And so we would always be a conduit in that space.
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to thank the good director from WYDOT for all he's done for me. I know everybody comes in my district comes to me and asks all these same questions that we're bringing up in topic. I went to the good director and he's been very honest and open about our transportation concerns. And I've relayed those back to my people. And one thing I do want to say, continuing to learn and continuing to educate is paramount, and understanding what the process of transportation in our state is on all roads. And again, I appreciate what your people are doing out there. The drifts and this year was really dangerous, and I appreciate your concerns for a lot of us that are in this house, and appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
And just follow up before we get to Representative Stiver about the railroad discussion, since there's a couple of railroad topics. You say you don't really oversee or regulate railroads in the state. Is that a Public Service Commission function, if I'm remembering correctly? Or it seems like that may have been why we had railroad topics referred to the Corporations Committee. But just an open question I think probably needed answer to, 'cause I mean, I could see how they'd be considered partially utility, but I think your non-answer director verifies that you have no part in overseeing. In spite of being a mode of transportation, the Wyoming Department of Transportation does not oversee railroads. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Okay. Representative Stivar, then Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Article 3, Section 39 of the Wyoming Constitution, aid to railroads prohibited. The legislature shall have no power to pass any law authorizing the state or any county in the state to contract any debt or obligation in the construction of any railroad or given a loan or credit to it in aid of construction of the same. So I just want to get that put out there that we don't have the power to do anything with light rail or anything. Thank you.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you, Representative. Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Chairman Bonner. Just wanted to touch back on the I-80 tolling. I think it just went through the bodies. I don't know, went through certainly the Senate, and it was decided it was not viable and nobody picked it up. I would like not to spend time on that. I think there's a whole lot of things we can focus on. Maybe I'm sure it'll come back up again, but I think we ought to give this thing a rest for at least a year. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I'm gonna echo that, and there's so many variations of the argument. We've gone through it all 7 years that I've been on here. We've had a discussion at least of some sort, ranging back to the previous director as well. While it's an admirable idea to try to fund I-80, it is almost an impossible feat for us to figure out how we can do it based off of the previous ways that we've looked at it. So unless there's something else in the tool belt that the director has that we haven't talked about, I'm in the same boat.
Senator Pappas.
Yeah, just going back to the rail conversation, I agree. State will need not to be in it, but the state needs to coordinate with entities that do. And certainly, I've been looking at it for many years, from when we looked at the Rocky Express and now Amtrak. I've been talking with Amtrak about the Front Range Corridor, and there's certainly this committee, those of you who were on it, have heard a presentation given to us by a private entity that, well, it's not rail, it is mass transit. There are ways to provide transportation across the state, but it's going to be a private entity doing it, or Amtrak, be the federal government, or a private entity. It won't be the state, but the state will have to certainly be at the table through our Department of Transportation to monitor, to provide guidance and what have you. So I think especially from transportation along the Front Range up to Wyoming, that's going to become critical in the near future. I've actually met with WYDOT regarding it. I'm meeting with our county commissioners and our mayors and with our chamber as well on some private public partnerships that we may see in the future. But I agree that the topic of some type of transportation through Wyoming and to our communities of Wyoming is probably a good topic. I don't think it's probably ready for prime time, and it certainly probably won't be rail. Just my thoughts.
Okay, so at this point, we got about 10 minutes left. Chairman Brown's going to go through the list of what we have here, just so everybody understands where we're at, and if nothing else, the benefit of the public, so they know what we're considering here. So go ahead, Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. So, lady and gentlemen, just going to breeze through these real quick. If you do have any questions as we go through these, and I would supplant that with major questions, please interrupt me as you see fit. But what we'd like at the conclusion of this meeting, and as Chairman Boner has mentioned, what we're going to do is we're going to ask the committee to draft up your top 5 priorities that you would like this committee to see based off of the information that's been provided to you by the military department, as well as what's in this packet. So I'll breeze through these fairly quickly. If you do have any major questions, please just, yes, Senator Pappas.
Yes, are you looking for 5 topics, military, and 5 topics?
Top total 5.
5 total.
Yep. So we'll go ahead and get started here. This one is, I'm gonna blast through the secondary version of this. One of the topics that was included by 2 individual legislators is commercial driver's licenses and intrastate amendments. Director, this one might involve you and some good information here, but basically looking at CDLs and specifically looking at intrastate and underneath employer liability. So some discussions there. We may have a senator and a representative interested in that one, both from leadership, so it might be something worth looking into. Next one is road maintenance. This was from a constituent that brought this forward. This one basically was an oversight of looking at basically the oil and gas roads throughout the state that are utilized and the county roads that are, adopted by the counties, and then they have to basically maintain those with a restricted budget. And so this is looking at how we might be able to potentially focus some of the money that comes into YDOT and or from these particular topics with the mineral taxes to try to supplant the counties for taking care of those roads. We did see allowable train links from Representative Chestick. I won't go into that one. Looks like we had a very large chunk here that was put in by the military department, but that was everything that you guys have seen here, so I won't go into that. Have the passenger rail discussion, whether or not that falls within the scope of YDOT and where that would ultimately fall would also be kind of a fun discussion, I think, in and of itself. Looking at going down here, we have non-resident vehicle registration for workers. I have some notes on this one that it looks like that may not necessarily be an overall large enough issue to warrant multiple meetings and having discussion on, but committee, if that's your pleasure, please feel free to add that on there. Representative Larson, JT, brought in vehicle registration, e-certificate and grace period. Again, maybe something that I would say that the committee definitely has some opportunities to work on with our local people as well as YDOT and how that interfaces with one another. Tolling authority, I would be curious to see if anybody has a pressing issue and they feel like this is something that needs to come forward. Otherwise, I would say we would just foul this one out and not even put this one up for consideration so nobody has to worry about it. Not seeing anybody's hands raising up that they want that. So I think we can cancel that one out as not coming forward. Electric vehicles, myself as well as Senator French put this forward. I do think this is a very large topic, and I agree with Mr. Pickard that we've got some unusual circumstances in our state statute, and it's a large topic, and I think getting the automakers as well as YDOT to the table to figure something out is probably something that's number one, doable, but number two, needs to occur sooner rather than later before we're seeing more electric vehicles on the road and we can't figure out how to take care of what's going on with those. So see, we've got addressing gaps and barriers to healthcare for Wyoming veterans. Ladies and gentlemen, this one came forward as a little bit different movement on looking at what I would say is Medicaid expansion. Just looking at a different version of this, I would gauge the committee's response to this, whether there's any interest in anything along those lines. Again, one of those that if I don't see anybody rushing to the helm here to try to take the lead on this one, I think this is another one that will probably not address as the Transportation Committee. Revision of Statute 34, Chapter 25, the plane coordinate system. This is one that I do think the committee should probably look at and will probably require a little bit of due diligence, not only with YDOT, but also our local 911 PSAPs. We've got a lot of work and a lot of background that goes into this. And for the committee who's not aware, we have worked very diligently to get NG 911, which is Next Gen 911, up and running, trying to get some of that information out, but our local PSAPs don't have all the information and all the funding to get that down. So this is something that is partially federally funded, would also be partially state funded. But what this portion is looking at the plane coordinate system. And so the overall GIS mapping of the state and how that would interface with ETS as well as YDOT. Think that is something that could be done, would not take too much time, and I think would be a valuable topic for the committee to learn on as well. Statutory updates from Department of Transportation. We've already talked about there. Representative Nemec, do you want to touch on your property tax exemption for Gold Star parents?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this could go either way as an interim topic or as a personal bill. I think it'd be a win either way, so up to whatever the committee decides.
Okay. I do think this might also be a good opportunity to look at the Department of Revenue and the Revenue Committee as well, what that might look like. I think it's one of those shared functionalities. When I bring a school bill that has to do with military, it's which committee is it going to get sent to? So if you're interested in that, please make sure you put that down. Free tuition, Representative Nemec, did you want to talk about this one as well?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, if you're breaking it down, if you're a combat veteran, you get tuition benefits, but a few people that fall through those cracks is those ones that are not assigned as a combat veteran, but are 100% disabled through the VA. There's no benefits for their dependents or spouses, so.
Okay. Seeing nothing there. Again, one of those that definitely we've discussed as a committee before in the past and worthy of discussion if you're interested. Representative O'Hearn, do you want to touch base on the AVs?
Mr. Pickard already mentioned it. It's an old topic and it's coming. So what he covered, and also safe routes to school. The second one, a lot of new technology. We talked about safe routes to school, and nobody likes to talk cameras or lighting and stuff like that, but that's something we need to look at, I think. And I think there's some later data out that the director also mentioned how many crosswalks are covered by the state. And I know Mr. Gillette's also talked about those. If we have any later data and some good information on how we can make it safer, that's what I was looking at. Thank you.
Okay. Moving over, we have Representative Smith. We've already discussed this. I'm not sure that this will be legislatively drawn. I don't know that we have anything that would necessarily require us to go into that falls into the purview of the executive branch, in my opinion. However, I do believe getting some good information from the department is well needed for this committee. Representative Stivar, did you want to touch base on the liability insurance coverage of accident insurance?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I need to get in. This was sent in through a constituent for me. Was Mr. Rose, and so was the abandoned vehicle statute revisions. They haven't been updated since 2015.
Okay.
And then the next one is accountability with the military department. This again goes to the sexual harassment problems that we keep hearing about within the military department. That was another one of my constituents.
Okay, thank you. So committee, looking at those three from Representative Stivar, the liability insurance coverage certainly does fit within our purview. The abandoned vehicles does as well. I could also say that the liability insurance, that typically does bring in our insurance commissioner as well. So just trying to think of all the other outside agencies that may be coming in to play a part of this, and traipsing as many people across the state as possible is not what we want to do. So definitely take a look at those if those are rising to the top of your consideration. Yes, Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, on the last topic, the accountability within the Wyoming Military Department, that was actually a topic we took up at the last interim. We discussed that, and we did have bills come out for that. I'm not sure we want to discuss it in another interim.
Okay, Senator, thank you. I would just say that I think maybe a white paper on what was discussed during the interim, just more again for education for the new members on the committee, probably be helpful. Senator Boner, Chairman Boner, did you want to talk about anything else beyond that? Looks like the other ones, these next two came from you, so.
Yeah, so we already covered the department's request. Then we have Senator Driscoll's request. It seems very similar to Representative Nyman's. So I think we might as well just accept that that's going to be a part of our interim, given their membership on management council. And I think we probably sort of combine those two topics.
Okay, Senator Kolb, looks like I have restriction of engine brakes. Did you want to discuss that?
Yes, Co-Chairman, if I could just take a second. This is just a request that we would look into a statutory change that would give the local counties, municipalities that avenue mechanism to put up rules that would restrict engine brakes. Of course, it'd be with the YDOT folks, Department Director Reiner and such, that we would put in safety guidelines with that. I mean, it wasn't going to be carte blanche, no engine brakes, but giving a simple way, instead of having to go through the rules process with YDOT and having them approved, that we would give probably a simpler avenue for municipalities and those local type of entities to be able to do this. So that's really what it does.
Okay.
And then the second one, if I want to speak to that one.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, and it's for slow moving. Okay, there's one thing I've heard pretty well constantly is why the heck are these slow moving vehicles in the left lane, be it semis or whatever it may be. I do realize that, I think there's an issue about restricting a certain class possibly being in the left lane. This would be a conversation of, can we do anything to get the slow moving vehicles out of the left lane to expedite our traffic on our major interstates predominantly. And that was the intention there. And please don't go by the hours I put on there. I am utterly unsure of how much time that's going to take. So adjust it as you feel needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First topic, commercial interstate amendments to commercial licenses, and one that Senator Driscoll put in. We could combine them two, couldn't we?
Yeah, and that's what the co-chairman and I have, with their leadership being both on management council, and keep in mind, please, committee, for those of you that have not probably paid attention to this process, we'll certainly give our committee's interest, and the co-chairman and I will go up and we will say this is what we would like to do. However, management council really does direct what we will be putting forward. They do give due credence to what we're interested in, but just to be as a heads up that that is likely one that we will see on our interim topics. So, Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to that point, because there's so many in here that are related, it's my intent, if you agree, that the ranking you want us to give, I may say this one, I consider one topic, and we'll consider that one of my priorities, if that's acceptable.
Yes, and so committee, just kind of marching orders from here, if you will. That's exactly what we're looking for. Maybe not necessarily the individual topics themselves, but the overall themes that you see throughout here, the top 5 of those. Please submit them to Kim. And so, Kim, your email address?
Senate.transportation@wyoleg.gov.
And those need to be in no later than, let's call it Wednesday upon adjournment. And so that was senate.transportation@wyoleg.gov. And so just get those in, and she'll compile those for us. And then once we have our first management council meeting next month in March, we'll let the committee know what's going on for there. So, Mr. Co-Chairman, anything further?
I think that covers it. Better get back to the floor.
Yep. All right, committee.
Can I just make one?
Sure, Representative Berger.
It just on the military department, the ASVAB. I don't know, maybe that would be more beneficial to hear that or talk about that subject in the education committee. Would you guys be all right if I made that recommendation when we talk about YTOP and the ACT, and maybe add ASVAB to that? Would you guys be okay with that?
All right.
Okay,
That'll
thank you.
work. We are adjourned. Thank you so much.